Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it. John, the head of Comtech, a new computer technology and development company, was driving home after a day's work. Things weren't going well at his firm. There had been crises in the work before. The rise was replaced by a fall, but it had never been so bad. So his thoughts were on one thing. Why was his company losing money? Why the previously prosperous company began to lose orders? So many complaints about their products had never been. What happened? These thoughts did not give him peace. Everyone has problems in life. Some solve them easily, and some run away from them, thinking that everything will work itself out. That's exactly what Veronica thought, running away from her common-law husband. Having hastily packed a suitcase of her and her children's things, she went, as they call it, wherever she looked. "Mommy," a cool light shouted little Tom. "Come on, Green." He pulled her by the hand. Veronica reached the middle of the road and felt that she was falling. Her legs shook, her eyes darkened, but she did not let go of the child's hand. So as she fell, she pulled him with her. John's gaze lingered on her as she began to cross the road. She was tall, too thin for her height, and he didn't like that kind of woman. She was pulling a huge suitcase like a truck and wouldn't let go of the child's small hand. He could barely keep up with the woman's wide strides. While John watched her, the woman had collapsed onto the pavement and was now lying in the middle of the road with the baby crying and screaming for mommy. John was confused for a moment, then jumped out onto the road and picked up the woman and carried her into the passenger compartment of the car. Picked up the suitcase, the baby, and took her to his house. In such situations, one had to think fast, so he called a doctor friend and asked him to come to him urgently. "What's your name, baby?" "Tom." "I'm Uncle John. You know your mom's name?" "Yeah, Veronica." "Veronica?" "Yes." "You can't spell." "Yes, I can't. But my mom says I'll learn." "Sure you will." I couldn't say R either, and then I learned. "Uncle John, what about my mom?" "I don't know, kid." The doctor's going to take a look at her and tell us. Jack, an internist of the highest caliber, arrived almost at the same time as the owner of the house. John carried Veronica into the house and put her on the couch. After washing his hands, the doctor began to examine the woman, and lifting her dress, he saw huge bruises on the inner thighs. There were bruises on her neck and arms, and it was clear that the woman had been abused. "John, I think she's been raped. I'll need to see her at the clinic and get her tested." "What's taking her so long to wake up?" She's just having trouble opening her eyes." "Veronica, can you walk?" I was having a hard time with her words." "You didn't answer my question." She tried to get up from the couch, but as soon as her feet hit the hard floor and her body straightened, her head started to spin again, and the doctor put her back down. Jack managed to get Veronica into his car. She resisted. She wanted to take the baby with her. But John was able to convince her that Tom would be fine. Her eyes were filled with fear. She knew it was wrong, but her strength was failing her. Back at the house, John's attention was drawn to Veronica's bag. Opening it, he saw a passport, Veronica, 27 years old. She was 35 now, but she didn't look so good. Little Tom was quiet and sat on the couch where his mom had just been lying. "Come on, baby. Let's get something to eat. What do you like?" "I like everything." "Mommy's a good cook." "How old are you?" He saw the year of birth in the passport, but there must be something to talk about. "I'm this old," and he showed me all the fingers on his right hand. "That's right, you'll be 5 soon, man," John said with a smile. "Do you like mashed potatoes?" "Yes." "That's good. I have an aunt who knows how to cook very well. Look what cutlets and mashed potatoes." The child looked into the deep frying pan and said it smells good. The boy ate very carefully and even knew how to use a knife, which surprised the man. "Who taught you how to use a knife?" "My dad. His name is Jacob." "I see. So you're Tom?" No, I'm Tom. John had never dealt with such small children. He had never had any of his own, though he had always dreamed of a large and close-knit family. But it didn't work out. Ignoring the advice of his parents about the chosen girl for the role of spouse, he got married at the age of 22, had to rent an apartment, a lot of work and moonlighting. But even this money, his Veronica, was not enough. Endlessly pouting lips, bad moods, and telling him off like a boy. It became so familiar and habitual that John stopped paying attention to it. If you're married, you're obliged to provide for your wife. I'm not saying no, but why shouldn't a wife help her husband? Go to work and supplement the family budget. Yes, Veronica wondered. That's not why I got married. And what for, I'm curious to know. To live in my own pleasure, not to work for pennies from morning till night. That was the last straw. I'll give you that opportunity. He packed up his things and left the keys to his rented apartment and left for good. She followed him for another 6 months and asked him to come back, but it took him 2 years to realize that his parents were right. He saw her again when he opened his company and became not rich, but the money appeared. Nick's nose was right. John, let's try it again. Let's start over. Try, but not with me. Veronica was in the clinic for a week. Jack gave her a cell phone so she could see her Tom every night. He played in a room with lots of toys, was cheerful, and most importantly, healthy. Thank you so much, John. I'll never pay you back. Oh, come on, I'm glad I could help. And you got a great kid. He's trying to say the ERs, so maybe by the time you leave the clinic, he'll be a surprise. She was crying and couldn't say a word. They put the baby in daycare. John would drop him off in the morning, and Lana, a good, kind woman who lived next door to her daughter's family, would pick him up. Although Veronica saw her son every day, all sorts of thoughts came into her head. She had to restrain herself from these thoughts. She needed strength to recover, so she had to think about good things. John's appearance in her life had shifted her idea of people in her brain, because living in her husband's house, she had lost her faith in kindness. The clock was already midnight. It was the last night in the clinic. She could not sleep. There were so many emotions inside, it was necessary to solve many problems. With housing, with work, with kindergarten. There are many questions. There are no answers to any of them. But she will try to do everything for the sake of her son. All the same, sleep took her in its tender embrace, and only in the morning, a young nurse woke her up to give her the last injection. Meeting Veronica from the hospital was John and his son. It seemed to her that Tom had grown and gotten better. Mom, I missed you. I missed you too, son. Mommy, Uncle John taught me how to say fish, cancer, frame, radio. John smiled. He liked that boy. Thanks, John, for everything. Glad I could help. John, please take us to the hotel, and I'll start looking for an apartment tomorrow. I'll pick up your stuff later, okay? How about this? You'll look for an apartment in my house. I don't want to drag the kid around to hotels. Then he has to go to kindergarten tomorrow. His teachers praise him. He's already found a girlfriend there. Son, don't make any decisions without your mom. Uncle John says a man should be independent and reliable. Oh, you guys are getting serious. I'll talk to you later. Yeah, let's go home. The table was set. Tom was getting the hang of it. He knew his way around. He felt at home. Lunch turned into dinner, and my son fell asleep in Veronica's arms. She put him to bed and returned to the table. Is everything all right? John asked, looking into the woman's eyes. Everything is just fine, Veronica replied, running her palm through his hair, then over his face, bringing a smile to John's face. He's learned to play gadgets, and he can spell the letter now. He really wanted to be home in time for you to come home from the clinic. This is really a surprise to me. Thank you. How did you get him into daycare? I know it's not easy. Lana's daughter, who picked him up from daycare, is the supervisor. It's simple. There was silence for a moment. Veronica spoke first. You probably want to know what happened to me. She looked at John. Of course, you must know who you let into the house. But I don't think we can do it in one evening. You'll have to stay at my place with my son. Well, if you're not too bored with us. Not at all. I was born and raised in the country. You may have noticed that I'm tall. That's great. Probably only in the village they called me Kolomenskaya Versta, or fireman's messenger, whoever liked it. I didn't pay much attention, but I was a little offended. Boys were shy to approach me because they were all shorter than me. My parents were simple people. My dad worked on a tractor. My mom was a milkmaid. She worked from morning till night, so my grandmother brought me up. She was the only one who knew what they called me at school. I'll never get married like that, Grandma. Who needs such a pole? Don't be in a hurry. At the right time, the right man will find you. I believed my grandmother, and when I met Jacob, Tom's father, I thought my grandmother's words were prophetic. He did find me. After high school, I went to the county seat and went to college to become a model designer. I've always been an excellent draftsman. Skinny, long, but as I grew up, I gained meat, rounded out, and in college they started calling me a model. What have you forgotten in this college, said the girls in the group. With your height and figure should go to modeling. So after graduating from college, I went to New York. Casting passed and began to work as a model. It was hard work. I was tired. But they loved me, in the sense that it was easy to sew on me. It was at one of these shows that Jacob saw me. And it was a siege. He was 10 years older than me, handsome, dressed expensively. But I was afraid of him. He looked like a bandit. No, not the knife-wielding kind, but the kind of gangster they call a businessman now. He had a fiery temper, and it was better not to get under his hot hand, and I'd been hit more than once. That's why I was afraid of him. He never suggested marriage, but he provided for me, and when Tom was born, he was glad. I thought that was happiness. I just never got to see the real happiness. I tried to leave several times, but immediately I remembered hard times, debts, lack of money. My friend kept whispering in my ear, "You're a fool, Veronica. Everyone envies you. Such a man paid attention, wanted a child from you, and you? Remember, my dear, that figure, breasts, and everything that you have on your face is temporary. And this temporary comes so quickly that it becomes scary, and you are in the group of divorcees rushing. Take into account, you are a special divorcee with an extra. Such not every man will pull, and in general will want to pull. Who needs someone else's kid, and I've put off leaving every time. But this time was the last straw. Did he rape you?" John asked a question and regretted it at once, because Veronica shrank, her hand shook, and the answer to the man was silence. Oppressive, sepulchral, pressing like a tombstone. "Did he rape you?" John asked the question and regretted it immediately, because Veronica clenched, her hand shook, and the man's answer was silence. Oppressive, sepulchral, pressing like a tombstone. The eyes of a frightened woman looked up at him. She clasped her trembling fingers around the hot mug, from which there was a pleasant tea aroma, and taking in more air, wanted to answer his question. But she didn't. "Whatever you tell me now, I won't run away with my heels clicking. I'll help you if I can. You're safe here. This is my home, and only the person I want here can enter it. I apologize for the situation on the road," and she's blushing. "Come on. No one is immune to asshole violence. Only the last asshole would raise his hand to a woman. I always thought that, besides hands sure of strength, a man should have a heart. That a man should take the initiative. We've completely forgotten the age of romance. Now it is not fashionable to invite on a date, to the movies on the last row, treat ice cream. You go straight to..." She looked at John, and he did not avert his gaze. Many of her statements he agreed with. He watched her nervously walk around the table, sipping sips of her long, cool tea. She was indeed a tall girl. If he was 6 feet tall, she was about 10 centimeters shorter, very thin. But it didn't affect her face. She had the right shape. Her eyebrows may be a little thicker than today's fashionistas wear, but those freckles could drive any man crazy. Blue eyes, her nose was a little upturned like Tom's, and her lips were her own, without silicone. Her hair was in a ponytail now, but when he'd carried her into the house after she'd fallen, it had spread out on the pillow. It was long and heavy, but she was a dyed blonde. Not a beauty, but very pleasant and far from shallow. When he woke up from his thoughts, she was silent. It was obvious she was gathering her thoughts. Jacob went to the season opening at the fashion house. There were a lot of people, all dressed up in beautiful outfits, the men in strict suits with bow ties. Champagne was flowing, music was playing loudly, laughter was heard from everywhere. For some reason, I was not worried. Probably, I did not understand the degree of responsibility that the fashion designers and the management of the fashion house had put on us. The show was excellent, which I did not doubt. We were all given a bonus, and I remember I used it to buy warm boots. At the second show, I noticed a man sitting on the front row. He caught my eye because he was wearing dark glasses. His hair to hair, and lightly unshaven. I noted to myself that he was an interesting man. But when this interesting man met me at the exit and offered to get into his car, which looked more like a tank, I refused, or rather, I was afraid. He did not ask me, but ordered me straight away. "Get in the car, I won't hurt you." Phrase sounded ambiguous with a hint. Say, "and the money will be," only after. I guess he preferred this format of relations. He forgot about romance or didn't know. There was no place for it in his life. Usually there were no misfires, so this time he hoped to make an effect. But the beauty did not fall for the usual tricks of a young man. "I'm not interested in your proposal. I do not get into the car with strange men, and do not poke me. We did not drink on a Broderreef." The stranger's eyebrows went up. The refusal clearly hurt the man, but he was not going to give up. He's not a boy to pout his lips and take offense. Did not agree this time. Will agree in another. But the girl was firmly planted in his head, and Veronica, taking advantage of his confusion, quickly disappeared in the car girlfriend, who took her home. From that day on, the siege of the fortress began. As Veronica saw Jacob again at a fashion show, he went to the fashion house with persistent constancy. Endless thoughts about the girl turned the grown man into a horny teenager. And one day when she came out after work, he stood with a large bouquet and introduced himself as Jacob. Veronica said then, embarrassed, "I know," said the man. "I know all about you. Can I take you to a restaurant for dinner?" I was really hungry, so I went with him. He brought me home very late and invited me to the restaurant again the next day. "No, Jacob, no offense. I'm a bit of a fan of these places. If you want to see me, let's just walk around." He agreed, and we walked around New York City all evening so I could finally admire her beauty. That's how we began to see him often, and in 6 months he invited me to his house. Of course, I understood why he called me there and how it could end, but I thought that he was my happiness. He found me, as my grandmother said. After living in his house for a month, I began to feel a terrible pressure from his side. "Veronica, you won't be working at the fashion house anymore. I don't want ugly men looking at my woman. Stay at home, take care of yourself. Swimming pool, fitness, beauty salon, wherever else you go. Add more from idleness." He flashed such a look that inside everything turned cold. "I don't want to sit at home and be a burden on your neck. I like my job, and that's not the deal. You're not my husband, and I'm not your wife." He left for work, slamming the door so hard I was surprised it didn't come off its hinges. It took me 15 minutes to pack my things, and I left again to my apartment, which, fortunately, did not have time to refuse. In the evening, I had work to do, and Jacob sat frowning in his seat with the bouquet. I didn't look at him and went home through the back exit. He rang the doorbell of my rental apartment for a long time, which I never opened. Luckily, it was the end of the season at the fashion house and everyone was on vacation. I'd rented another apartment, giving up my old one, which was very comfortable and cozy. But otherwise, Jacob wouldn't let me rest. I even changed my SIM card. I decided to get out of Jacob's life completely. I managed to do it for exactly 3 weeks. He had everyone on edge, And one day I saw him with a bouquet when I came out of the driveway. "I'm sorry." He rushed up to me. "I'm an idiot, a jealous idiot. You're so beautiful and everyone's staring at you. I'm going crazy. Jacob, this is why we shouldn't be together anymore. I'm not quitting my job, and I'm not going to fight with you about it. Let's just be friends." "No, I don't want to be friends. I want you to move back into my house." "Do you hear yourself?" I am. I demand. I'm going crazy. But where are my desires? They don't exist and can't exist if you're around, Mr. Jacob. I got away this time, but he wouldn't give up. There was no point in changing apartments. He'd find one anyway, so I decided to leave the house less. I saw his car parked in the driveway every morning. "Diane, what do I do? Jacob won't let me leave. Come to my house. He's parked in the driveway every day, and I can't get out. It's not like he stays out there all night. When he leaves, call a cab and come to my place." So I did. And for another week, I was fine. But as soon as I got to work, he took his seat in the front row. "Oh, Veronica, there's your handsome boy again. He's your destiny after all. You can't abuse a man like that. I'm sorry." "That's right, he loves you." After work, Jacob was waiting for me again, so I didn't run away from him. "Okay, Jacob. I'll go with you, but let's make a deal. I'm working, no dictating, no pressure." "I agree," he said, and I moved back in with him. After I moved in, I got pregnant quickly, even though I was on birth control. I didn't need a baby yet. I had nothing of my own. I lived in Jacob's house. I wasn't a wife, so I didn't have any rights, and then I had a baby. I went to my doctor, showed her the pills, and told her that they didn't help prevent pregnancy, but the opposite. They're the best on the market right now. They're the most reliable. Maybe you've been forgetting to take them. Then it really can happen. I was about to leave when she opened the box. "Veronica, what did you bring me? These aren't the pills I prescribed for you." "What do you mean, the wrong ones?" I was surprised. "They're the ones I bought at the pharmacy." "Yes, the box is the same and they look very similar, but you can't fool me. Who had access to those pills? Where did you keep them?" "In my bedroom, in my bedside table. I think they're pacifiers. Vitamins at best. Leave them with me. I'll get them to the lab." That's how I found out Jacob switched my pills with regular vitamins. I had to apologize to the doctor. I didn't know how to tell him, but I didn't want to look stupid, so one night I did. "Jacob, I can't believe you had to be so treacherous to get me to commit to you. You were thinking of yourself again, and I trusted your manly word. Do you realize what a terrible thing you've done? I can't trust you now. Tomorrow you'll be sick of me and you'll poison me." Fortunately, he did not start to gawk with surprise and refuse, and immediately said that I'm very stroppy and tame meek and only a child. So ended an episode in my life called The Taming of the Shrew. I was saved by my height and thinness. I worked practically until I gave birth, under Jacob's evil stares. Tom was born, my sweet son, my joy and pride. Everything had changed in the house except one thing. I was still not Jacob's wife. It was all right with him. He loved his son and did everything for him. Now he was happy. I was at home with the baby, never going out. He brought everything, groceries, things, diapers, everything. I only went out for a walk with Tom, and then around the house under the supervision of the guards. Then I realized what a golden cage was and how I wanted to escape from it, but the child held me back. When Tom turned 3, I started talking about work. "Jacob, I want to get a job." "Where do you want to put the baby?" "We'll get a nanny. We won't be the first. We won't be the last." "No," he said shortly. He didn't explain anything. But I insisted, and that's when we had our first big fight. "You keep me in this cage, I can't even meet my friends. What kind of captivity is this?" And that's when he hit me for the first time. He smashed my lip, my nose was bleeding. "You wanted to see your friends? Go on, I'm not keeping you." So I went out all night. probably to the casino or to the girls. I didn't care. All night I lay with ice on my face, but there was a huge hematoma on my cheek. I got a call from work. "Veronica, are we expecting you? How are you? Are you coming back? How long can you wait?" Well, considering your previous achievements, 6 months, others wouldn't wait a month. You know how many people are interested. But there aren't many girls with your height and figure. Okay, thank you very much. I'll try my best. It was well past midnight. I'm tired, John. I'll see you tomorrow. You have security here? They won't let anyone in here? Don't worry, there's security. I'll tell them not to let anyone in. I'm not expecting anyone, and neither are you. Okay, I'll feel better that way. She fell asleep next to her son, calmly and without dreams. When Veronica woke up, the house was empty. Oh my God, I overslept. It's a shame. A stranger taking care of my child. She went down to the kitchen. There at the stoves stood a pleasant woman in a beautiful apron and cooked. The aromas were appetizing and even enticing. Her stomach rumbled immediately, and the woman turned around. It seemed to Veronica that her body reacted very loudly to the mind-blowing odors. "Good morning. You're so fragrant, it's impossible to remain indifferent. Your son gives me the same compliments." "He does. He'll be a ladies' man. I think he'll be a fine man." "Thank you. Sit down to breakfast. Lunch won't be for another 3 hours. John said he'd be here for dinner, which means 6:0. After breakfast, she went to look around the house. The first floor was occupied by a large living room, kitchen, John's study, utility rooms, and 2 servants' quarters. And on the second floor was the master bedroom, 2 guest rooms, a shower, a bathtub, a toilet, a small exercise room, and a small room hastily furnished for Tom as a playroom. Veronica's heart squeezed with gratitude to the man. I'm lucky, Veronica thought. Even though I hit my head pretty hard, I met John. She went into his office. She quietly opened the door and poked her head in and looked around. There was a nice desk, a big chair next to it, a lot of books and flowers. The violets were all in bloom. It was gorgeous, so they like it here. She remembered her grandmother's words. A flower will never bloom if it is not happy with that person. On the coffee table, she saw pictures. John was looking at her from one. Brunette, no more than 35 years old. Small curls cut very short and barely visible. Dark chocolate eyes, sensual lips. He looked like he was looking into the soul. It was obvious that he didn't come to be photographed on purpose, and the lens caught him by chance. His shirt was carelessly unbuttoned, a little more than was customary for men. She noted that he was an interesting man, but even that wasn't the main thing. He was kind and decent. The other pictures were of his parents and friends. She stayed a little longer in his abode and went to lie down, her strength not yet fully returned to her. She woke up to someone shaking her by the arm. When she opened her eyes, she saw Tom. "Son, who brought you here?" "Lana. She's nice." He lay down next to his mother. "I missed you so much. Didn't you have a bad time with Uncle John? He's interesting, but I missed you. My darling boy, I've been dying to see you too, but the doctors wouldn't let me go until the treatment was over." It was just the 2 of them at dinner. John didn't show up as promised. They didn't wait for him and fell asleep. John had a lot of problems at the company. His security service did not sit idle and checked all the streams where the information goes from whom and most importantly to whom and most importantly to whom. Tomorrow, John allowed all the employees to leave from lunch under the pretext of sanitizing the cafe on the floor below. He and his guys stayed the night to set up the security cameras. For the surveillance cameras, John supervised all the work. The security guys were great. Not jocks, bouncers, just smart. They took a few people at a time and came to John a week later with the results. It was all on a flash drive. John was furious. The person he trusted the most was working for the man who was ruining his reputation. All right, Mickey was feeding him information. And Tony, why is he off the hook, is our biggest customer. So this Christian guy fights with Tony, letting him know we're so cheap, working on two fronts. Who's Christian? Never heard of him. He's an ex-gangster used to dealing in the 90s. Thinks he can do it now. Find out more about him. All right, I'll have it on your desk in a couple days. Keep the cameras on a permanent basis. I'll only trust them after I've checked. I want Mickey in my office first thing tomorrow morning. Look the bastard in the eye. See what he's been missing. He arrived home in the morning, quietly showered and went straight to bed. But he woke up at 7:00, as usual. Come in, John told him. The boy climbed up on his bed. Are we going to kindergarten today? Do you want to? I don't want to go a little bit. I want to be with my mom. Then it's settled. You have today off, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Thank you, Uncle John. He took his face in his little hands and kissed him on the cheek. John felt it. It felt incredible. He had never felt like this before. Everything was turning over inside him. The contact with his palms let something warm and important into his heart. At some moment he even wanted to press him to his chest, to feel this childish sincerity and to see his smile without two teeth. I'm getting old. Kissing a child brings a tear to my eye. How imperceptibly old age crept up, the man thought with a smile. He remembered his serious conversation with Mickey, grumbled and quickly left for work. Tom was so happy to be with his mom all day long. How good it was talking to you, boy, not leaving Veronica's side. And I'm very well with you, my darling. After breakfast they read, then played, walked, and after lunch the child fell asleep like a dead man. And Veronica decided to call Diana. Hi, friend, she said cheerfully. When are you going to work? Soon. How's it going? Same old, same old. How are you and your handsome boy? What's new? She was always asking the same questions. She believed that the main thing in a girl's life is to find the right man who will provide from head to toe and solve all problems. She was not very successful, but Diana did not lose hope, and after each failure again, threw herself into the battle. She went to the most expensive restaurants, to prestigious exhibitions, where you can often see wealthy men young and not so young. Veronica was used to relying only on herself. She left her parents early and realized that there was no one to help her but herself. She studied, worked part-time, solved her problems as best she could, including material ones, and never relied on anyone, especially not on a man. She did not rush into a relationship, as in the maelstrom, and cautiously looked at those who tried to hit on her. More often she ignored all the signs of attention, waiting for the one and only one that her grandmother said, Veronica, are you all right? She was wary of such a question. Yeah, she stretched out. Why do you ask? So yours came running with bulging eyes. Wanted to see you, went to the bosses, had heartbreaking conversations with me. Screaming his wife and child are missing so's. And what did he want? I wanted to know where you were. Where are you, really? Maybe I'll come to your place and we'll talk. It doesn't matter where I am. Don't you trust me? Diana, it's okay. No offense. Bye, I'll call you later. After that conversation, she felt uneasy and regretted calling her friend. What did she say? Jacob asked Diane, who had been standing next to her the whole conversation. Diane was about to dial her number when Veronica called her. She didn't say anything. She said, it's the right thing to do. You must have hurt her badly if she ran away from you and took her son with her. Don't worry. Diana took up to calm the man. Diana, such handsome men. Do not leave her. She purred, buttoning up her shirt. Let's go somewhere distracting. Your Veronica's coming. She's not going anywhere. She came so close to him that she could smell his perfume. You're as prickly as a hedgehog. Shall we go out tonight? Let's do it next time. And after dropping the $5,000, walked out of the fashion house. She'd liked Jacob when he'd first come to their show. But for some reason he was attracted to Veronica. What did he see in her? Well, She had a nice figure, but that's about it. Those freckles that makeup artists put on every time they did a makeup job were a nightmare. But Jacob liked it. I don't understand these men, Diana reasoned. I'm probably doing terrible things to my friend, she thought, but it's not my fault. It's Jacob. He's provoking me, stroking my arm, and for nothing I can't help myself and do something shameless. And what to do? I'm a living woman. I justified myself. John's workday got off to a rough start. First of all, he only got 2 hours of sleep, and secondly, Mickey was waiting for him outside his office. Looking at him, John thought he hadn't slept at all, which was almost true. He'd come to work straight from the casino. I guess he hadn't completely lost his conscience because it was embarrassing to look John in the eye. He took him to work for him, taught him a lot of things and considered him his friend. But Mickey was on the money. He was not only a good programmer but also a talented mathematician. He developed an algorithm on how to win at casinos. It did not work at once. About a year he developed, tested in theory and several times in practice. And all this time his program did not fail. He bought himself a nice car, a small apartment, though not in the center but his own. After the first winnings, he visited the casino too, 3 times a month to check the new changed algorithms. And again, Mickey was a winner. He was noticed, and the casino workers became simply afraid of him. But he didn't abuse his luck. Once noticed, the very angry looks, did not give the appearance, but did not go to the casino for 3 months. He began to live large, changed the apartment, a more prestigious in the center. He started vacationing abroad. This could not afford even the owner of the company contact John, but Mickey could. When asked by a friend where such opportunities came from, Mickey replied briefly, luck. One day, leaving the casino, he was stopped by a man. He was dressed expensively. Mickey now immediately recognized branded clothing. Listen, kid, tell me the secret to your success. Tell you the truth, Mickey was scared. It's called luck. Don't take me for a fool. I know a little bit about computers too, and I used to be good at math. Tell me. There's nothing to tell, said Mickey, getting in the car. But the man was persistent. Look, I'm not for free. Whatever dough you want, I'll pay you. I don't need your money when I work for a great firm and casino. Luck is on my side. He thought he'd told his new acquaintance enough to get him off his back. But he was wrong. The new acquaintance wasn't backing down. One day, getting into the car, after another good win, a lanyard was thrown around Mickey's neck from behind. He wheezed, kept the Veronica around his neck, making it a little easier to breathe, and only when his arms were hanging like whips was the grip loosened by patting him, his cheeks. Shall we talk? An unfamiliar voice asked. Mickey could only nod. Taking a bottle of water and sipping almost half of it, he turned around. In front of him sat what appeared to him to be an unfamiliar man who had told him to keep the car lights off. Ready, awake? Ready, he wheezed. It would have been a long time ago when opening the door, Jacob shouted. Go, he's ready! A familiar man sat down next to him and introduced himself. Jacob, Mickey said and grinned wryly, realizing that the man sitting across from him had known all about him for a long time. Jacob asked in a winning voice, Look, I don't have anything to tell you. I have sketches, numbers, calculations, and they won't tell you anything, much less help you, and I can't explain anything. Do you play blackjack or poker? Jacob asked interestedly. I play everything. I'm interested in where and how accurately my algorithms work. You're not bluffing? Mickey didn't dignify him with an answer. He felt superior to the man who was listening with his mouth open. I can tell you what bets to place, but I won't be playing that day. But let's agree that I'm not going to stand behind you for the rest of my life. Okay, a month. No, that won't work. I'm not at the casino every day. Let's do it 3 times. No, that's not enough, 5 times. Okay, 5 times, and don't come near me again. Especially not with a lanyard. It's a deal. The evening at the casino began with Jacob undecided. He stood between the roulette table and the poker table. He chose roulette. The bets were placed and the game began. Jacob's game started right away. Tonight was clearly his night. Mickey stood behind him and whispered in his ear. The roulette partners smiled wickedly, the smartest ones leaving the table, and the bravest losing their last money. "Come on, Jacob." The man nodded, collecting the chips he'd won, and stood up from the table. He left the casino and quickly got into his car. Mickey was glad that his new algorithms hadn't failed him. The very next day, Jacob called Mickey, but he had other things to do. "Don't you think I have other things to do than go to the casino every day? I'll call you when I have time," and he hung up quickly. Jacob was not happy. He stopped sleeping and took it out on Veronica, raising his voice at her and blaming her for everything. It wasn't until the following week that Mickey was able to go to the casino. But this time his system had malfunctioned, and Jacob had lost in a landslide. He shook Mickey like a punching bag. "You can kill me," the man shouted. "But I warned you there's no algorithm in the world that never fails. You're gonna pay me back, okay? I'm not gonna reimburse you. It happens. It didn't work for me every time. Indeed, the next time everything went well again." The winnings were so huge that the administration asked to pay the reward in installments, as they had a maximum amount that could be withdrawn. Mickey's intuition urged her to stay away from Jacob, but the desire to get a lot of money drowned out her voice. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that they were able to go to the casino again. Jacob was tearing up. Mickey had a work emergency, so he had to stay late to get his assignments in on time. Third and fourth camping trips were a failure, not at all. And Jacob had his fists in the air. Mickey had to take a week's vacation at his own expense, saying he had to go to his parents' house. Jacob was threatening him, and he'd already written him a letter telling him how much he owed him. But Mickey didn't have that kind of money. The last trip had been so modest that it hadn't even lifted Jacob's spirits, but instead lowered them to "I want to die." "You got the money?" "No. I don't have that kind of money, and I won't for the next 5 years." "Sell the car." "Why on earth would you play? I warned you the system was flawed, so it's not my fault." "Look, you're getting a little talkative. You might get in the car and not make it to the office. Get your money ready, asshole." To say Mickey was scared is an understatement. He tried to raise the money, but it was a pathetic attempt. "I've got a proposition for you," Jacob said on the phone. "I need some data on the orders your company got from Tony. You bring it to me. It'll clear the debt a little. We'll see about that. Your boss's firm is bothering me. There's too many of us on the market. Help me, I'll help you." And he decided to do it, figuring he'd do it with his shirt on. And so John's troubles began. And now Mickey was sitting outside his office and didn't know what to say for himself. It was embarrassing to talk about the shirt that was closer to his body. He suddenly remembered how much good John had done for him. As soon as Mickey walked into the office of the head of the firm, John realized that he would no longer work and trust this man. John wondered how he could be his friend. Those running eyes, the crunching of his knuckles, the pale face and completely insincere look. He was all fake. Right now, he didn't like this man at all. There were many questions about him, and the main one was, why had he been so ungrateful? After stopping at the door, Mickey went to the desk and looked at the manager and said, "John, let me write a letter of resignation." "You will, because I can't trust you as I did before. Don't look at me like a beaten dog. You won't see any compassion from me. Believe me, I had no choice. There's always a choice. You just have to do it right. You did it wrong. Tell me who you gave it to. John, I'd advise you not to mess with this Christian. He's a real asshole. You two deserve each other. Tell me." When Mickey stopped talking, John felt that his story was true, that he was sorry for what he had done. But he decided not to say anything to him yet. "So here's the deal. What you did for Tony and then sold to Christian, you fix it yourself. John, I want you to back out of this job and give me the money up front. It'll be easier. What are you talking about? You're suggesting I give up. Where am I going to get the money to pay you back like you're suggesting? I paid my employees' salaries and you too. You don't want to give it back. It's a lot of money. Mickey shook his head. Well, I don't think anybody would. You're going to call Tony and tell him you've come up with a much more interesting solution to his order. But I haven't. I see. Here's your assignment for the week. Work hard and surprise Tony. Then you write a statement, and I'll never see you again. John's week was up, and he was still there. Nothing interesting came into Mickey's brilliant head. Friday night, John called him in. How'd it go? Mickey replied, shrinking back. I'll give you an update on Monday. I've still got to check the calculations. Is it really something interesting? I don't know. You'll see for yourself. John went to the store, bought Tom a new constructor, packed a cake, candy, ice cream, a bottle of good cognac, and rushed home. He felt good at the mere thought that he was welcome. After that evening, when Veronica said she was tired, they never spoke again. Maybe tonight, this Friday night, they could sit longer and he would finally learn the whole truth. Tom welcomed him like his own daddy, but unfortunately he'd never gotten to experience parental happiness. Uncle John, hello. Hi, you're saying her so well. Good job. Veronica stood back and smiled, looking at the relationship between her son and a strange man. He was afraid of his own father. He had been raising him to be a man since he was 2 years old. Stop hugging and kissing him. He's not a girl, Jacob shouted. But he's just a baby hiding the baby behind his back, his mother replied. My orders are not negotiable, yelled the father. Don't scare the child. We're not in the barracks, replied Veronica. Why do you have such a long tongue? Why don't you respect your husband? Keep silent. No, she's attacking him with her fist. Veronica grabbed Tom and left out of her husband's sight. She was afraid of him. And with a strange man, her son felt calm and quite happy. How was work? You've been in trouble. You haven't been yourself all week. Yeah, but it's getting a little better now. Rat caught, cornered. You can't corner a rat. It can bite so hard to survive. It's easier to just let it go so it doesn't make things worse. It won't. John's phone rang, and he excused himself to the study. She watched her son unwrapping a present and heard Christian's last name. Did Christian call again? John asked in surprise. What does he want this time? Don't say yes. Let him go to the casino, or you'll have to take off work to visit your parents again. I know all about it. What else you got? How's the assignment? It's good. You've got a good head. Bye. Looking into Veronica's frightened eyes, John asked, what's wrong? Who's Christian? Sorry, you were talking loud. Yeah, he's an ex-gangster that my employee leaked information to. He's got me in a lot of trouble. Tom, let's go pack. We're leaving. Grabbing the baby by the hand, she rushed upstairs to pack. Veronica, what's going on? And after 2 flights of stairs, he stood in front of the door to the children's room. Can you tell me what it was about the Christian name that scared you so much? It was the first time he'd ever seen tears fall in hailstones. It always seemed when they showed it in movies that it was a montage. The tears couldn't flow like that, one after another, but looking at this woman, John realized they could. If I don't leave your house, you're going to have problems not only at work, but in your personal life. He took her by the shoulders. You can answer in normal language. I don't need riddles. I have enough of them at work. She took a deep breath. Christian is my husband. He's the one I ran away from. The one who raped me when he and his friends got drunk. Mostly him, of course. One of his friends had a vase through my head. Another one held me down, and my husband was a bastard who abused me in front of them. Because I refused to let his friend, to have a drink with them. That was the last straw. I didn't want to stay home anymore. And now he's looking for me. John was really dumbfounded that the thug was Veronica's husband and that he had allowed himself to be bullied like that. Do you understand now? You'll let me go now? But where are you going? You haven't even found an apartment. I'll stay in a hotel for a couple of days, and I'll find what I need. No, Veronica, I won't let you go now. I'm not afraid of your Christian. You should be. He's a ruthless man without shame or conscience. How did you end up with him? I told you about the siege. That's how I got involved. How do you know he's looking for you? I called Diana. She told me. You shouldn't have called. He can track you on your cell phone. Let's change your SIM card. Come on, don't scare the baby. Let's go to dinner. We'll talk later. John, I don't want to drag you into a fight with that monster. I'm a big boy and I'll take care of it myself. So Veronica stayed. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening when at last Tom got tired of playing and running around and went to sleep. John and Veronica were sitting in the dining room eating ice cream. Tell me, what does your husband do? John asked. He didn't like it when I asked him what he was doing. You don't have to get involved in my business, he told me. You know less, you sleep better. And I stayed out of it. But I did hear that his computer company was going through a rough patch. I know that he steals cars and jams the license plates. He once had men come to him with such faces that it's scary to remember. I've always tried to stay out of their sight, and Jacob's just as bad. Veronica, make your specialty coffee for the guests. And I was shaking, trying to put everything on the table and run away. They were always arguing, fighting, and they'd use a lot of bad language. My child and I would go to the back room so my son wouldn't hear this outrage. I'm sorry I asked you to tell me, John said guiltily. The memories are difficult, and I can tell you're uncomfortable. She didn't answer him, but continued. The last time they came, they were strangers, young guys. Quite handsome, I even thought. Well, this time it would be without any language, and the negotiations would be quiet. But no. One of them caught me by the arm and pulled me down onto his lap. Jacob jumped up and hit me. Why are you wiggling your ass in front of men? Get out of here. I didn't have to deal with him, and I wanted to leave. Veronica, come have a drink with us, the guy said. Don't touch me. That's no way for a guest to behave in someone else's house, I yelled. He stood up, pulled me against him, and I fumbled for the vase and smacked him on the head. The other one grabbed me, my dress snapping as I jerked, and that's when Jacob decided to show his manhood. I looked at his angry eyes and I was scared. Not because he might raise his hand to me again, but because for the first time in my life, I decided to cross what Jacob thought was a red line. I decided to go against his will, to rebel without fear of his fists. Mom had always idolized Dad, saying he was king and God to her, and she taught me to live the same way. Always shut your mouth at the right time. Mom taught me, then the family will get along. My mom wouldn't understand me right now. I can't accept Jacob like that, even though he's my son's father. She was silent, her tears preventing her from speaking, and there was nothing more to say. In the morning, while my husband slept, I packed my suitcase with my own and the children's things and left. I left the house that had long been my fortress and my golden cage at the same time, without regret. Jacob was no good, ever. And the overbearing nature of his parents had left a mark on the boy's life. He always wanted to prove himself strong, self-sufficient and all, powerful. So he asserted himself as best he could. Veronica tried not to bend under him, but she was afraid for her life and the life of the child. Are you going to divorce him? John asked. Of course. Then what are you waiting for? You write a statement and I'll take you to court. You have a minor Tom, so you'll have to go through this unpleasant procedure. Jack, the doctor who took you to the hospital, remember? He took all the beatings, wrote up a report that you needed surgery after your husband's games. So that's what we're taking to the police. Come on, John. He's gonna kill me. No, I'll just get a divorce. Then he'll really kill you, and then he'll steal Tom. Why can't I have a husband like you? Kind, sensitive, child, loving. And Veronica looked at him with adoration. I'm far from white and fluffy and never have been. I can be rude, demanding, and even harmful. And if a person is a scoundrel like your husband or Mickey, I can always find the strength to tell them to their face. So don't idealize me. Everything I do for you and Tom is entirely of my own free will, and no one would make me do it against my will. I'm no noble knight. I'm as flawed as any man. But it's fair to say that I'd never allow myself to raise a hand against a woman or hurt a child. And you're a good mother. You have a maternal warmth that attracts Tom to you, and that's wonderful. You have a night to think. Either you change your life and we go to the court and the police, or you look for an apartment and shake from every knock, waiting for the husband of a bandit. The next day was Saturday. John was not in a hurry, so breakfast was delayed. The first question he asked his guest was, of course, about her decision. What have you decided about your life? John, I was up all night. I've been thinking that if I wasn't so, how shall I put it? Don't tell me. I'll figure it out, he added with a smile. Oh, you're making it easy for me. If I wasn't like this, I could have avoided so many problems. I've made so many mistakes, and every one of them is almost fatal. Don't scare me. Fatal means there's nothing you can do about it. I think you've got it all ahead of you. Your optimism is inspiring, but I'm scared to think what's ahead of me. You're gonna have a happy life without a tyrant. Do you have a good lawyer? No, I don't see any lawyers among my acquaintances. Well, that's easily remedied. Jack Doctor has a brother who's a very good lawyer, so we'll go to him. Oh my God, it was one mistake when I agreed to sign with him. I remember his every word, how he skillfully persuaded, insisted. But I held out for a year, pulled, said that a serious step. You need to think. But on the birthday of my son, he still talked me into it. He promised me a lot, as always. But I didn't need anything he tried to give me. I told him, remember, if you raise your hand against me, you're beating your son. He agreed, and really, for 6 months or more, I was the happiest woman. But then my wishes were no longer taken into account. He reminded me that he was in charge, and his wishes were the law. How he wants it to be is how it should be, and everything else is dust. Jacob is king and God. It's become an unspoken law in our family. He's older, he's more experienced, so he'll decide everything. That's how my happiness ended. If I hadn't done that stupid thing, how easy things would be now. But we are not looking for easy ways. We need to get everything in the struggle. The sweeter the victory will be. Your gullibility is both bribing and infuriating at the same time. If you didn't know him, that's one thing, but he's already shown his hands in despotism, and you still believe him. Yeah, I'm telling you I'm stupid. Remembering the difficult times, Veronica tried to realize what she had achieved by her 30th birthday. A despotic husband, a failed marriage, no job and no career. No job and no career. No home, no money. No, nothing. So much for marital bliss. The only joy is a son. But that's a lot too, the woman reassured herself. Veronica, I love only you, Jacob tried to say softly. God, what a lie that was, considering the constant humiliation and yelling. Do the women you love get beaten? Do the women you love get humiliated? No, no, and no. She no longer entertained the hope that her husband would ever be a better man and appreciate her. That's it. Hope was dead. Her illusions of marital happiness were gone like smoke. Veronica wanted to give him her life, but was left at a broken trough. Her marriage is a complete fiasco, and now it can be said for sure. Veronica didn't usually use profanity and had judged Diana when she'd used a 3-story mat before she could close her mouth. But now she was so shattered by her outcome that she mentally allowed herself to lose control of herself. John wasted no time in calling Jack and asking about Liam. Vala dear, we need your Liam now. I've been waiting for that call, because after Veronica's visit to my place and the way she'd been patched up, it was unforgivable. I'll tell Keir. He'll call you. But Jacob didn't waste any time. He called everyone he knew who knew Veronica in any way. But he couldn't get anywhere in his search. Only Diana had been to his house twice, and not just to his house. Now she was calling him, whispering into the phone that she missed him. She was looser and more experienced than Veronica, but she was sticky. Jacob didn't like that, so when he saw Diana calling, he didn't answer the phone. He didn't know who else to involve in the search for Veronica. It had been 2 weeks since she and her son had been away from home. The news came from nowhere. Victor's Day, the head of the traffic safety department, began with another disappointing report. Another traffic accident and another fatality. On the table there were reports on accidents and traffic violations committed by drivers and analysis of the reasons for their occurrence. I decided to start with the tapes, distracted by a phone call. "Morning, Victor." He recognized his old friend Christian. He didn't like to talk to him, but he had to turn to him and he helped him. So, adjusting his voice to a friendly tone, he answered, "Jacob, I'll get right to the point knowing how busy you are." "Go ahead." My wife disappeared 2 weeks ago. Neighbors saw her leaving with a baby and a huge suitcase. Didn't leave town by any means of transportation, so maybe you can track her. "Are you kidding me? How am I supposed to track her where? All over the city?" He was pissed at everyone, even though he knew the guy was innocent. "Why all over town? You know my address? Look around the road, see if you see anything interesting." "All right. When did you say you disappeared?" 2 weeks ago. Yeah. You have a lot of traffic accidents there, 2 in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, I've heard that. Well, can you help? I can't promise anything, but if there's anything interesting, I'll call you. I still have your number. It's a pleasure. I'll be waiting. Veronica certainly didn't realize Jacob was getting too close. The 2 weeks, Veronica and her son had been away from home. He'd been sick and twisted. He was angry at his wife, wanting to find her and punish her for everything she'd done. But on the other hand, he marveled at her courage. Mr. Christian had never thought he would long for his wife and son. The house was uncomfortable and cold without them. He feared that she had not just left him, but had gone to someone else. Could she have decided to do that? He was afraid to answer that question for himself. He was afraid that she would ask for a divorce, which of course he would not give her. Afraid to know the truth, where and with whom his Veronica was. But despite all the anger boiling in him, he had to admit to himself that he missed Veronica. He missed her as a woman. She hadn't broken, hadn't been afraid, and for that she was worth respecting. Jacob thought, angry at himself for thinking that. What was she missing? How dare she leave him with a child? He had no answers to those questions. Jacob had lived with this woman for almost 7 years, and no matter what troubles happened between them, he had grown accustomed to her and loved her. He'd been unfaithful on occasion, and what man doesn't? But male adultery is quite different from female adultery. God made men that way. There's nothing you can do about it. His face was twisted with anger, and he didn't know what he would do to her if she were home right now. Yes, he wasn't the perfect husband. He'd hurt her. It was true. But why leave? And then in the collapse of relationships, and families are always guilty of both. I saw his family and parental relationships in front of me. His father had always beaten his mother in front of little Jacob. He remembered how she used to wail when her husband chased her around the room. Don't. Calm down. It was awful. He felt sorry for his mother and he stood up for her. But she wouldn't go anywhere and she wouldn't take him away from his father. And when his father died, his mother didn't cry, just stood there looking blank. The neighbors would tell her to cry. The mother looked at them and answered, "I cried all my tears when he beat me. There was nothing left." The women nodded understandingly and hugged her by the shoulders. Mother did not live long, but even the little that the Lord gave her, she walked with a smile and did not look back with fear. Those must have been the best years of her life. And his wife. What was she missing? A house full of trees, a beautiful son. You can't understand these women, Jacob thought, lying on the couch. He'd been neglecting his business a little, missing calls from his partners, Veronica on his mind. On Monday night, he got a persistent call from someone who didn't want to pick up the phone, but who wanted to talk to him. "Yeah," he barked. "Jacob? Well, who am I? To whom do I have the honor?" I'm your wife's attorney, Veronica, representing her in divorce proceedings. My name is Liam. I've prepared the divorce and property division papers. You'll need to review them, consult with your attorney, and give me an answer. The terms are more than good. Your spouse isn't out to rob you. Jacob jumped up from the couch. This was a well-known and very expensive lawyer. Where did my wife get the money to pay for your services? Is that all you're interested in? Don't you have any other questions? The lawyer asked in surprise. Where is my wife? I must talk to her first. I'm not authorized to give you her whereabouts. If she finds it necessary, she'll call you herself. Have a nice day. So she filed for divorce. She's offended, Jacob thought. He dialed her number, but nothing. She changed her SIM card. He threw the phone down angrily. Liam arrived Sunday night. John went out with Tom, and Veronica had a long talk with the lawyer. He was a man about 50 years old, grey-haired, with a very soft, ingratiating voice, which disposes to a frank conversation. In a couple of hours, she laid out to him all the reasons why she no longer wanted to see her husband. I hate him. I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to live in the same house. I despise him as a man, and I want nothing to do with him. Let him sign all the papers and give me a divorce. I'd like to part with him in a good way. Maybe you should think about it. You have a child, a boy, and if his father disgusts me, shouldn't the child see happy parents? He'll only learn to beat women and hate his father. I won't stop them seeing each other, but I won't live with him. You're a determined woman, and you're tough on your husband. Every word you say is a sharp knife. If he heard you, he'd be hurt and offended, said Liam. Nothing. For his cheating and his abusive behavior, he deserves it. I lived with that monster for 7 years. He's broken all my wings. I'm an unhappy woman. Veronica confessed to the lawyer and cried, only my son was a ray of light in that dark kingdom. Only by looking at him could I live in his father's house. But recent events have put an end to our family relationship. The limit of my patience is over. I want a divorce. And let him live as he wants and with whom he wants. He's always had a lot of women. He's never had enough of me. Liam looked at Veronica in her sad eyes and added, everything will be as you want it to be. Don't worry about it. Tuesday morning, he got a call from Victor. Jacob, come over. I have an interesting movie for you. I drove, and with a whistle of tires, his tank took off. Jacob was in such a hurry that he was literally flying to meet Liam. He ran into the office, forgetting to say hello, and asked, did you find her? You'll see for yourself. But the big suitcase and the little boy are present. That's her, said the man with the abnormally shiny eyes. You sit down and calm down. Otherwise, I won't show you anything. Take a sip of water. Jacob took a deep breath, drank some water, and really calmed down. Is that it? Are you okay? Yeah. Sorry. Look. And he turned the display to him. Looking carefully at what was happening on the screen, he recognized Veronica at once. But when she fell, he even flinched. What's wrong with her? He asked the Liam. I don't know. Keep looking. Traffic resumed, and a young man got out of one car, lifted Veronica in his arms, and carried her into the cabin, then took the suitcase, put it in the trunk, and put Tom in the back seat. He slammed the door shut and drove away. Jacob sat there, unable to say a word. Where was he taking her? Hospital, I think. There are 2 clinics along that road. You'll have no trouble finding out if she's there or not. Here's the license plate number of the rescuer. That's John. They own a company called Comtech, and this is his address. Look for your fugitive if she wants to come back to you. She's my wife, and she should live where her husband lives. I agree. Only she doesn't think so because she hasn't come back yet. Maybe she's in the hospital, unconscious. But she's got her papers on her. I think so. And the baby would have been returned to you. The police would have found you. I'm sure of it. Jacob was sad. But he didn't forget to say thank you. I owe you one. You want me to pay you back with money? No, I don't need money. If there's a problem, I'll come to you. It's a deal. He found the clinic where Veronica spent a week. They called the doctor Jack. "Hello," Jacob said, smiling sweetly. He obviously wanted the doctor to like him. Jack knew immediately who was in front of him. "What can I do for you?" "You had Veronica here a while back." "I know who you're talking about. Who are you, and what are you interested in?" Jacob cheered up. The doctor was clearly in a good mood to talk to him. "I'm Christian's husband. I'm interested in what happened to her and where she is now." "I don't know where she is now because I'm a doctor, not a policeman." "You'll tell me what happened to her now. Go ahead." "I have nothing to tell you except that she ran away from me 2 weeks ago with the baby." "That's it?" "Well, yes." "What else did you want me to tell you?" "How many people raped her?" Jacob looked startled at the doctor. "What are you talking about?" "She had multiple lacerations. She was patched up, pieced together. All the beatings were removed, every bruise was recorded, and a doctor's report was written on the woman's condition after the surgery. I advised her to go to the police with these documents. I think they'll be interested in you. Any other questions for me?" "No," and the doctor left without saying goodbye. Mr. Christian didn't expect such a turn of events. When he left the clinic, he called his friend at the police station. "Valera, it's me. Did they say you filed a report against me?" "Yes, yesterday." "Why don't you call me?" "You understand, I had it in my hands for 2 hours, and they took it to the prosecutor's office. It's a very serious and competent document. The doctor's report is written to the letter. There's nothing to fault. Every bruise you gave her has been photographed. It's over, Jacob." "What does that mean?" "It means you're looking at a very serious charge of spousal rape from 8 and up. Do you have anyone in the D8 office?" "No, but even if I did, I wouldn't be asking for that kind of a charge. I suggest you make a deal with your wife. Kneel on your feet, apologize, and if she takes the complaint, you're lucky." He hung up without saying goodbye. Clearly, Veronica's got John's help. He can't forgive me for trying to ruin him. Okay, I'm not proud soothed himself a man can and lie on his feet, but the divorce will not give. With these thoughts, he went to John's address. Having called, he waited for the guard to open the gate. But the gate didn't open, only a small intercom window. "Who do you want?" "I'm looking for Veronica and my son Tom." "We don't have those. This is John's house, and he hasn't had visitors in years." My nerves were on edge. "Open up, you thug," Jacob shouted, pounding his fist on the massive gate. But the guard didn't even bat an eye, just slammed the window shut. Veronica and Tom were gone. John had moved them into his one-room city apartment, which had been empty since he'd moved out of town. That's what the lawyer said. "It's wrong for you to hide it in your house. You could get in trouble. Move it to your apartment, and if they ask, say they're renting it. I'd even draw up a contract and put a price on it. You don't have to take the money, but it's the right thing to do." John did what Lim said. Jacob didn't want to leave John's house, where he thought his wife and baby were hidden. He waited until evening, but there was only one owner at the house. No one had come out of the house. Could they really not be here? Then where? Where should I go to look for them? I absolutely have to talk to Veronica. I'm sure I can convince her to take the application, Jacob thought as he drove up to the house. He'd been out of the office all day again, ignoring calls from work again, all his thoughts on his wife and child. All week he'd been driving to John's house, but all to no avail. If I don't find him by Monday, I'll hire a private investigator. He had more experience and more time. Jacob partly understood his wife. He'd hurt her. He'd raised his hand to her on more than one occasion. Veronica decided to get revenge, punish him for all his tears. She was trying to numb the pain that was tearing her up inside. He could certainly ask for forgiveness, even give himself and her his word, but he wasn't sure he could change his behavior. This is the way he's used to living. This is the way he's used to living. This is how his father lived. This is how the neighbors lived. He did not say it was right, but seeing it from childhood, he could not change himself. After the birth, His wife blossomed. She became seductive. All the men who came to visit him looked at her, but she got her way. He was driving along the central street of the city and thought about how to fix the situation. Standing under a traffic light, he looked around and saw his Veronica, his son in the company of John. How to get out of the car he didn't know. There was a huge tail behind him and everyone was honking. He rounded the corner and jumped out of the car. He tried not to lose sight of them. When he saw the two of them, he felt a lump in his throat. The fuses blew all at once and it was impossible to contain himself. They looked like family, not a single thought in his head, only rage, anger, and spite, which were bad counselors. He couldn't feel his own body. It was as if it had atrophied. Pulling himself together, he ran across the road and followed them into the mall. He didn't find them right away. They were sitting in a cafe drinking coffee. Tom was having a brownie. "Hello, son." Daddy shouted the child and ran to him in his arms spread apart. Veronica immediately stood up. She was afraid he would carry him away. But Jacob wasn't going to make her angry. On the contrary, he wanted to show with all his behavior that he wouldn't do anything bad. "Hello, Veronica. I've been looking for you. I missed you so much. We need to talk. I'm not going anywhere with you." "All right, let's sit here at the table and talk." John didn't interfere as long as Jacob was behaving appropriately. He knew they had to talk anyway. "Veronica, you two talk here and Tom and I will go to the game room." "Okay, just not for long." During those 2 weeks, her husband had become a complete stranger to her. She didn't even want to look at him. "How are you feeling?" Jacob asked with concern. "You make it sound like you're mocking me." "Veronica, I'm sorry. I was out of line, but to be honest, I don't remember much from that night. That doesn't excuse you, and I'm not going to forgive you. I almost died after your games. I can't see you." Jacob could barely contain himself. He'd never let anyone talk to him like that. Men were afraid of him. Girls looked up to him with adoration, and his wife couldn't find the words. "I filed for divorce. This time it's serious, and I'm not backing down. How are you going to live? Is this the one you're hoping for?" And he nodded at John. "I've never relied on anyone, just myself. If you remember, I was working and making a good living. I'll go back to the fashion house, and Tom will go to daycare like all the other kids. We'll manage." "You shouldn't do that, Veronica. I love you." "That's a strange kind of love you got there, Jacob. You beat me, you rape me, you don't let me out of the house. You don't let me talk to my girlfriends. You don't let me talk to my girlfriends. You don't let me work. You don't confuse the two. Is that what you call love? Love is different. No one said it would be easy to live with me. It's easy to love when things are good. You try to keep your feelings alive when things are a mess. Forgiveness is hard, but if you want to keep your family together..." She didn't let him finish. "I don't want to, not at all. When I think of your fists, my whole body hurts. I've heard a lot that the key to family happiness is to accept a man as he is, not trying to subjugate him to suit your whims. That's hard, but you've never been able to do it, and more importantly, you've never wanted to. So let's end this conversation. You're going to work this out with my lawyer. Do you want money for a lawyer?" "No, I can handle it on my own." But John promised help. John saved me from dying. No one stopped for a car. He came out and helped me. So you should be thanking him, not bankrupting his firm." "What did you complain about?" "No, I was just comparing the facts." "Well, if you've made up your mind and I can't seem to talk you into it, then I have a condition. I'll give you a divorce and agree to a divorce and agree to everything your lawyer tells me if you drop the police report. And if I don't, then this divorce case will drag on for years." "It won't drag on for years. You'll go to jail and I'll divorce you without your consent. Understand?" She was about to get up to leave when he tugged her arm roughly, pulling her back into the chair. "You will do as I tell you. I can't believe you're going to let a kid have a black spot on his record. I mean, any decent organization is gonna have to show the father and mother. You don't care how your son is viewed. I don't think he'll thank you for it. Veronica thought for a moment. I'll go to the child and think about your proposal in peace. How do I get in touch with you? Your lawyer will contact you. Goodbye. Goodbye, Veronica. I'm not so easy to get rid of. Oh, I don't need to be reminded of that, and she ran to the second floor to find Tom and John. Where's Daddy? The child asked when he saw only Mommy. He went to work. When are we going home? Veronica looked at John for support, but he preferred not to interfere in family matters. You'll have to decide that for yourselves, John replied to her pleading look. Do you miss Daddy? Yes. Veronica didn't know what the right thing to do was, so she called Liam. I wanted to consult with you. Don't do it over the phone. I'll come over. Okay. After her meeting with Jacob, Veronica began to have thoughts. She kept coming back to the life she'd led with her almost ex-husband, and the more she thought about it, the more panic overwhelmed her. What would her son say to her when he grew up? Why did you deprive me of my father? What will she say to him? Tell him how he beat her or worse, raped her. She would start pacing the apartment, rubbing her temples with trembling hands. The child misses her father. Does she have the right to put him away for a long time, a very long time? And Tom? Will he ask her again when they go home to Daddy? Everything had been so easy before this meeting, and after talking to Jacob, there were more questions. Her insides twisted at the thought of Jacob's satisfied face and the smug look he'd thrown at his rebellious wife. But she could handle it because she wasn't alone. The main thing was that she'd had the strength to leave, or she'd have lost herself. Anything can happen in life. You can lose everything in a moment, but losing yourself is the worst. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm stuffed up. I don't see my happiness. A spoiled girl to her rich husband. But how scary it is to have everything and not feel happy. She was ready to give the appearance of this happiness for a small apartment, the opportunity to work and be near her son, or maybe to hell with those thoughts. She tried to push them away, tired of them. Glancing at her watch, Veronica waited for the lawyer. The doorbell rang only 2 hours later. Sorry, Veronica, I'm late. Traffic was terrible. Well, thank you for coming. I've been waiting for you. Now I can't take a step without your advice. Calm down and tell me. He realized from her frightened eyes that Jacob had found her and was probably intimidating her. How did he find you? How did you know? I guessed from your condition. I don't know. We were with Tom and John at the mall, and he came up. He was trying to be very nice and peaceful, but I saw something in his eyes that others didn't. He was staring at me from the corner of his eye like a beast. Anger, hatred, rage, those feelings that sizzle him. He said to take the statement from the police, and then he'd agree to all our terms. And if I didn't, he'd make the divorce last for years. He's bluffing. If you don't take the statement, he'll get time served and you'll divorce him quietly. That's what I told him. But he frightened me that it would be a black mark on Tom's record. His father's an ex-con, and he might not get a good job. And then Tom threw himself into his arms, and now he's asking me when we're going home to Dad. So I'm confused. What do I do, Liam? Whatever we decide to do is what we do. Don't take anything. You burn your bridges, you don't want to go back. You of all people know this man. If you show him you have any doubts or worse, fear, he'll never let you live. That's not what I'm worried about. In court, there may be a question of how you're going to provide for the child. You don't have a job. You don't have a place to live. Those are all arguments against you. So only the father can bring him up. He's got great facilities money. It turns out he's an eligible groom, mansion, business, good looks. It's all in his favor. The court can give him a reprieve. What am I supposed to do? Get a job right away. Put Tom in daycare. The apartment will be rented for now, but it's available. Otherwise, there will be problems. If the kindergarten is a problem, I'll help you. Okay, I'll call work tomorrow. I think it won't be a problem. He was tired today. He had one more difficult case to finish. But it was a lot of sweat. That's why Liam felt like he'd been drained. You're tired, Liam. Why don't I buy you some borscht? Tom praised me today. Did he? Well then, I'm in. The lawyer left an hour later, leaving Veronica to ponder. In the morning, she called the fashion house, but unfortunately, they were short-staffed and turned her down. It was a blow. She couldn't believe that there was no room for her where she had worked for several years. It was morning on the clock, and she no longer had any energy. It was as if she was being forced to unload rail cars. The fact that she wasn't being hired ruined her already bad mood. She called the model home again. It's me again. I'm sorry to interrupt you from work. Maybe you know who needs clothes demonstrators. Veronica, I really don't. You're a good worker. I'm sorry to turn you down, but I can't just fire someone for your past performance. You took a long time to get ready. I'm sorry, and she hung up. Veronica cried and, covering her eyes with her palms, collapsed on the couch. She felt cornered. Nothing was working out for her. It was painful, hurtful, and she thought unfair. And what are you so snotty about, the inner voice said. Is this a time to feel sorry for yourself? You're a fashion designer? Pull yourself together, get your laptop and look. Look, 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 look. She jumped up. Tom was standing beside her. He was sniffling too. Mommy, why are you crying so loud? Are you scared? I'm sorry, sweetie. I just remembered something sad. She wiped her tears, tidied her hair as if someone could see her, and opened her laptop. Despite her hysterics, despite her resentment that she couldn't do anything, after sitting at the laptop for 2 hours, she found a job opening at a sewing factory and called immediately. Yes, we need a fashion designer. Do you have any experience? Veronica had nothing to say. I graduated from college as a fashion designer. I have my own work experience. How many years ago? Maybe I'd better come. I see. No experience. You graduated from college about 10 years ago. She didn't specify how long, because the woman was right. She's got nothing, no career, no family. Young lady, are you still here? The woman on the other end of the line asked. Yes. Come by tomorrow at 9. 0. Bring your work. See you tomorrow. She didn't hope for anything, even on a penny like that. The administration wanted someone with experience. In the morning, having collected Tom at 9:00 sharp, they stood at the gatehouse. A pass was issued in Veronica's name and she entered the factory. The woman with whom she had spoken yesterday turned out to be a petite brunette, very pleasant looking. Who's that mommy's ponytail? She said to the child. I'm not a ponytail, I'm Tom. Will you go to work with him too? The woman asked sternly. No. The kindergarten is quarantined for the time being, but soon it will be open for children. Well, let's see your work. And you want to talk to the head of the experimental shop. It's our main department. It is there that new models of future clothes are developed. There we have modelers, designers, technologists who make samples of models. Finished her story, Megan. That was the name of this sociable woman. She opened a large folder with models and looked at Veronica. The patterns are old. We made them 5 years ago. Do you have any newer ideas? I have ideas. I just haven't had time to realize them, Veronica said in a high-pitched voice. Megan took her to the shop manager. Edward here, Veronica, is the new girl. I told you about her yesterday. Will you talk to her? Yes, I would like to. In front of her stood a young man, blond with blue eyes and a dimple on his chin. He was a little taller than Veronica. Come in, he invited her, letting her into the office. They talked for about half an hour, and the boss agreed to take her on a 1-month probationary period. Our team is young, not afraid to put forward bold ideas, so we keep up with the times. I will be glad if you will settle in and will be useful to our factory. I'll do my best. Tomorrow, to the personnel department and get to work. Veronica had been working at the factory for a month. She didn't like the work. It wasn't her job to design models, but she was good at it. Tom went to a private kindergarten a stone's throw from home. She rarely saw John, mostly on phone calls. Several times she'd been called in to speak to an investigator, and Liam had accompanied his client. He was so experienced, never let. His client, no offense. The investigators sometimes got lost talking to her. A month later, Veronica got a call from Ninel. Veronica, have you found a job? Yes, I work as a fashion designer. And why these questions? Will you come back to us? Diana got fired. She showed up drunk at a fashion show a week ago. We didn't see her. She fell down on the runway. It was a scandal, and yours was in the front row watching. Are they with Diana? You didn't know? No, but I don't care. We're getting divorced. So you're coming? I'm afraid to quit. What if you forgive her and I have to leave, and no one will hire me here? No, don't worry. The director won't take her back. She's not a bad girl, but she's got no breaks. We're expecting you tomorrow. Feeling was twofold. On the one hand, she was glad that she was going to do what she liked. But on the other hand, she was uncomfortable in front of Edward because she had just started working, and Jacob would be after her again. But Veronica wanted to go back to her old job. She felt she belonged here, and her earnings allowed her to live without counting pennies. Well, we have no right to keep you. I can only wish you all the best, said the foreman. And they said goodbye. In the morning, Veronica was in a great mood. Now everything will get better, thought the woman. They were in a hurry with their son to work. He to kindergarten and she to the fashion house. Sitting in the bus and watching what was happening outside the window, she smiled. She was distracted from her pleasant thoughts by a phone call. It was John. Good morning. Hi. I'm on my way to work at the fashion house. Can you believe it? Diane got fired for misconduct. She heard John laughing. Why are you laughing? That's what you get fired for. She came to work drunk, Veronica said in a whisper. Did you think carefully before you agreed? You mean Jacob? That's right. I thought about it. What am I supposed to do now? Hide. I don't like it. Is that what you're suggesting? I'm suggesting that you think carefully before you do anything. You're responsible for the baby, and he hung up. John shouted Veronica, apparently so loudly that the passengers looked back at her. She got there quickly. With a sinking heart, Veronica opened the familiar door and walked into the lobby where she was enveloped by such a familiar smell. The guards greeted her and smiled, so they hadn't forgotten. The girls hugged her and tried to touch her. Veronica looks away embarrassed, clutching her bag. She's in her element. As she approached the principal's office, she bumped into Diana. She was in tears and looked at Veronica like an enemy of the people. You waited. If I hadn't snapped, you wouldn't be here. Quiet, but you're a mean one. Jacob raised you right. You put a man like that in jail. She sniffled and walked away. What did she just say? The kind of man Jacob put away, the kind of man he took into custody. And she dialed a lawyer. Liam, what about Jacob? What about him? He's in lockup where he belongs. If you're going to withdraw your statement, you can find another lawyer right away. I don't work with kamikazes. No. I just found that out by accident. That's why I called you to check. I'm working at the fashion house again, as of today. I was afraid Jacob would come after me. Don't worry, you can work in peace. Even though he knew someone in the prosecutor's office, they couldn't help him. But your Jacob tried very hard. He's not mine, and he'll never be mine again. I like your attitude. After talking to the lawyer, I was in a life is good and living is good mood. There was peace inside. Now she could live her life without looking back. Great, her life began to change the minute she was free of Jacob. This was the relief she had dreamed of all 6 years. Jacob was no longer her problem. Finally, she walked into the principal's office. Nothing had changed here except that Elizabeth had gotten a little chin over the years, but she was still dressed smartly and tastefully. Veronica walked forward a little, eyeing Elizabeth. Her pink lips stretched into a smile, clearly pleased to see Veronica here again. "Are you happy?" She started the first conversation. "You're in great shape, as always," she said, looking her over from head to toe. "Yes, I'm happy to be back at home. Shall we sign the contract? Are you ready?" "I'm ready." She went to a few more interviews, had to see Jacob, but with a lawyer by her side, she felt very confident. At the trial, Mr. Christian behaved abominably. He kept trying to accuse Veronica of cheating on him. "She's even living in his apartment now, even though she's still my wife. Your Honor, Counselor, she rents this apartment. Here's the lease. Here are the receipts. But this is John's apartment. But she has the right to rent any apartment, especially since this one is cheaper. She lived in his house while I was looking for her all over the city," shouted at the Hall X. She wasn't just living. She was between life and death, beaten and raped. As soon as she got better, Veronica left and has been living on her own for a long time. After being beaten for all of 6+ years, it's a wonder she didn't become disabled, finished a lawyer. Jacob and Christian had 2 attorneys and they earned their bread honestly. The trial was postponed 3 times at the request of the accused, and they even managed to reduce the sentence by 3 years. The sentence was read for about an hour, and Mr. Christian received 9 years in a strict regime colony. She breathed the air of freedom and her heart missed John. But that's another story.